another episode of Roll or Die. Today's guest has been around for a little while, and she's really been tearing it up lately on the competition circuit. So big welcome to brown belt Yasmine Sherriff. Thanks for joining us.
It's Sherriff, I just found out. She's the Sherriff.
Yasmine Sherriff. She shot the sheriff.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Welcome. Yes, welcome.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, guys. I've been watching your podcast or actually listening to it on Spotify for a while now. So thanks for having me.
No, thank you. I mean, Anton has a plan to have all the female black belts in Australia on, and I think it's pretty safe to say that you're probably pretty close to getting your black belts based on your recent performances. You've certainly been tearing it up, like I said.
Look, everyone keeps talking about this, but I'm quite happy to have a few more years at Brown. So I don't really like to talk about it.
You'll be judged, I wonder. Like if you're going through competing, winning all the comps, etc., what do you think dictate what is an appropriate time? I mean, obviously it's like when your coach says, but like what do you think would be what would make you comfortable to have black strapped around your waist?
Look, my biggest thing right now is my mental, we'll call it mental health, I suppose, with competing. I've always had really bad anxiety. It's been an ongoing issue for my whole jiu-jitsu career. And so the last 12 months, I've actually been working with a sports psychologist and working on that. So my BOA performance, even though I lost, was the best I've ever competed. So I feel like I've nearly ticked all those boxes. But yeah, obviously it's up to my coach. But yeah, that's probably
you're right, BOA. You did 100%. Like that was the fight of the night with Tina. I definitely think, even though, like you said, you lost, it was so exciting to watch. And thank you for putting on such an awesome performance for us as spectators. Can you share anything of the insights of some of the gems of knowledge that you've learned from your sports psychologist that you could share with our listeners?
So I guess I've got really negative talk towards myself, and I've got a daughter now, she's 3, and he kind of goes into would you let your daughter talk to herself the way that you're talking to yourself? And I'm like, no, of course not. He's like, so why are you doing that? So my daughter's my main pushing person to change my behavior, because I definitely don't want to bring her up like that. It's not about losing either. I'm totally happy to lose, but it's just I can't mentally give everything on the day. I'm so scared. And what am I scared of? Losing? No, I'm not scared of losing. So it's just, working through that stuff and just believing in my jiu-jitsu, believing in my fitness. I don't believe in my fitness. I think, I'm going to gas. But everyone's gassing, aren't they? Everyone's, tired. So just really believe, having positive self-talk the whole role, and trying not to have the negative thoughts come to your mind from from the morning, I'm like, why am I doing this? And I've trained so hard, but I've probably could have trained harder. I'm a shift working mum now, so it's tough. I don't have all of the hours in the day to train, and so I'm, I need to be really kind to myself and say I'm giving my best, and if someone beats me on the day, well, they've performed better than me. Even if I've done something silly, well, they've performed better than me. And so that's kind of the mentality that we're trying to work at the minute.
Being so authentic about that. I think it totally, you basically described my world as well. All of these reasons, and then when it comes to performance, and it's in front of people that are supporting you, and I don't want to let them down. I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to make my club look stupid. There's all of these weird things that go on. And yeah, for me, I feel like I'm special, but not in a good way. It's I'm specially bad. I'm not the one who's going to do anything good today. In fact, I'm just going to make everything look bad. So it sounds like that negative self-talk. I'm sure, I know you're not alone, because I have exactly the same negative self-talk. But it does take kind of sharing about it, doesn't it, to kind of for it to stop having its power, like sharing about it and taking actions and getting out there and actually competing and realizing it wasn't like you thought it was. And
Yeah.
never again. Is it, what else?
My previous coach, Paulo from Flow Martial Arts, used to say, no one gives a shit whether you win or lose the next day. You'll go back to your lives, your jobs. No one cares. So it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Can you share with us, Yaz, how you discovered jiu-jitsu, how you started it?
So I think 11 years ago, I split up with my fiance at the time. And I saw this poster on a wall at a shopping center. It said mixed martial arts, self-defense. And I really wanted to travel the world at that stage. And like, I had no idea how to defend myself. And so I rocked up to this club called Shindo New Breed MMA on the Gold Coast and started. And I hated being punched in the face. I do not like MMA at all, but I love the grappling side of things. 6 weeks into my starting of this, I decided to do the Queensland State titles. Had no idea of the rule set, had only been training for 6 weeks, and then that's where my passion kind of started. I traveled to Thailand a few times to Phuket. First was to Koh Samui, and then to Phuket top team a couple of times. And the coach Olavo there, the first time he's like, you need to train in a gi, because my club didn't train gi then. And so the next time I went, I trained in a gi for 6 weeks and I loved it. And then I was forced, because at that point, the club didn't let me cross train or let anyone cross train in gi at a gi club. So I made a decision to just transfer into gi. Yeah.
And what so in that first competition, like 6 weeks in, no training, what, like that could have been a defining moment, maybe? I don't know. Like, do you think that was, like, in hindsight, is that something you advise people? Compete as early as you can and just see what happens and have fun with it? Or like, was that a daunting experience for you? Is that the reason why you get so nervous in comps now? Like, what do you think about competing that early in the game?
Well, look, back then that was in 2011. And so there was not many females around back then, you know. So these days though, like the white belt girls, holy moly, some of them could give me a run for my money. So I probably wouldn't advise these days to compete after training. Yeah. Unless you've done like a wrestling or sambo or some type of funky background. But nah, I don't think so.
I got it. Cool.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I was keen to have you on, Yaz, is that if you don't mind sharing, there was a period as well, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, where you took a big break from jiu-jitsu and you've come back. So can you talk to us a bit about that? Because there are quite a lot of people that do drop out of jiu-jitsu. Maybe they're not listening to this podcast anymore, but it'll be interesting for people who are maybe on the cusp of dropping out. What happened there and how'd you get back?
So I never actually dropped out of jiu-jitsu. I dropped out of competition.
Oh, okay. Sorry. My apologies.
No, it's all good. So I lived down in Miami, which if you know the Gold Coast, it's the southern end of Miami. I trained at Flow Martial Arts under Paulo. And then I bought a house and moved to Ashmore, which is about a 40-minute commute then to Cooley. And so my partner at the time, like, got lots of respect for her, but she really didn't like the relationship with jiu-jitsu. I'm sure many people know this. It causes a bit of pressure on your relationship. And so commuting, doing shift work and not seeing each other, I chose to move to Axis, in Southport, which was really close to my house. I really had a bad relationship with competing. I had a really bad weight cut in the trials for the Abu Dhabi Pro. It was ages ago now. I had to lose 10 kilos and it was like the poorest choice I could ever make. I did it by myself. I didn't know any nutrition back then. And it was just a really hard cut and I just really hated competition. And so I decided to just quit competition. What's the point? And then I had my daughter and we got pregnant and I'm like, why have I quit competition? Because I'm too scared of whatever it is. Am I going to bring up my daughter or my child? Because we didn't know what we're having at that stage. Am I going to bring up my daughter to have this mentality? Well, things are a bit tough. Just quit. Well, that's not me. So I decided to compete again, and I've been competing ever since at Purple Belt. So I think I won pan packs, all 4 absolute gi and no gi a few years ago. And then I took some time off again competing. And then I got back to it at brown belt when I moved back to flow martial arts about a year after I had my daughter. So yeah.
Competing for you is an ongoing proof to yourself that you're not going to let things stand in the way of your life, so you can be a role model to your daughter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Love that. Wow.
It's definitely you.
Yeah, I can relate. Absolutely. My kids made me get my finances in order, my health in order. I quit drinking, you know, like they are an incredible driver for, and they're either going to rebel against it or embrace it or go through waves of both of those things. But it really is a great catalyst, isn't it? And something that's always there for you, you know, like things come and go in life, but your kids are all, like for many of us at least, are always going to be a driver to do better and show them what's possible. That's amazing.
And you talked about that weight cut, but I know that you've been quite a bit smarter recently about your weight loss journey. Are you happy to share some of that with our listeners as well?
So my weight goes up and down all the time depending on my life. I previously had a really bad relationship with food, probably from all the weight cuts. So I did a challenge a few years ago when I first had my daughter, or my wife, my ex-wife had her. And so in my 4 month period, I decided to do a challenge. So I stacked on a whole lot of weight on purpose on top of what I was already overweight. And so then I spent 12 weeks and I lost 20 kilos. And then I just formed an even worse relationship with food. And so I'd binge eat all the time. Look, I'll tell you, I'm a nurse. And so I'd leave work and I'd already had all of my meals, yet I'd just stop at Macca's on the way home and get something else. And so I was exhausted all the time. I'd drink 500 mils of water each day. You know, even if I was training, that's what my total water intake was. And I was exhausted all the time. So I found, I did States last year and I hurt my back the week before. And my coach at the time's like, okay, and I didn't put that much training into it, but I won by the skin of my teeth. And he's like, right, from now on, you can't be like that. You need to eat better and you need to get fit. And so I'm like, okay, right. So I really listened to him and I got this coach, John from BJJ Conditioning. I don't know if you know him. He's online Instagram guy, lives in South Australia. And his wife, Ash, is from Intuitive Nutrition, is a nutritionist as well. So together I changed my life with food. I drink now 2 liters of water a day at the bare minimum. And my relationship with food is, you know, I barely binge eat. And I said I would never cut weight again, but Boa made me cut weight. So I don't jump on the scales, but I only had to cut, I think, 3 kilos. It wasn't much at all. No, it wasn't. It was 67 in a gi. So I had to lose 7 kilos in 7 weeks, but we did it a really healthy way. And so I was really scared that I was going to have, you know, bad eating changes post that comp, but I've, you know, maintained that. And I say again, I'm never going to cut weight, but, you know, it will probably happen again if I get in another comp that has to make weight. But yeah, I try not to make weight. Yeah.
You're on a real journey. You know what I mean? Like this is a story that like we don't get to see into the background of a lot of people in the way that you're sharing this stuff today. And it really does show kind of like the struggle and the adversity, like the mental battle that's ongoing all the time to be on the competing circuit, like whether it's weight or whether it's negative self-talk or whether or not it's training and, you know, and changing up training, whatever it is, like you really are grinding, you know what I mean, in an awesome way, because that definitely is a lot of people's story. And then you get people like, you know, there's a lot of people out there who it just seems to just become so easy for, you know, I don't think it does personally. I don't think it comes easy for anybody, but it just seems to come really easily to some people. And I think that is hard to relate to for most of us. So, you know, again, I just thank you so much for being so open, because it's, well, it's just very relatable. I'm learning a lot today just by having this chat.
And Yas, could you share anything as well about being a shift worker? Like, I don't know, maybe for you, it's just something that you just grind away, you just get on with. But how does that kind of affect your training? Like, I'm sure there's listeners out there that also work shifts. Have you got any tips for them?
Look, it's really difficult. You know, I'm 36 now. I've been a nurse for 14 years. I've worked in emergency. I didn't think that shift work was that bad. I thought it was a great life until I've had my daughter, and I now have reevaluated my life, and doing night shifts is awful. I recently made a decision. So I said to myself that I would train 3 times a week. And I lived in Ashmore, and I decided to go back to flow martial arts. And so with my ex-wife, we had this agreement that I'd train there at least twice a week, if not 3. And so that's all I was training up until January. We split up last year, and I've become a single parent. And so my commuting time and my time in general has become more important to me. And so I made a decision to leave Flow, which was really upsetting. And I still have a really great relationship with them. But ultimately I moved to a gym that's close to my house, and I fight under Fight Club now under Luke Meir. And he allows me to train essentially whenever I can. And so there's a whole bunch of shift workers there. And so we just, if we can't make it to the sessions, then we organize sessions ourselves. So he's got a bit more of a flexible timetable than what Flo had. You know, he has a 5:30 a.m. class and a 10 o'clock class, and then the nighttime classes. So you can kind of make it to one of those sessions. But yeah, it's definitely hard being a shift worker. My friend Steph Tran, I don't know if you know her, she's a gun purple belt and also a doctor. You know, sometimes she might not be able to make it to a class for a week because she's working. So, you know, it's difficult. You just have to make the time. I've done lots of deck sessions back in the day as well with all my friends. I'm very grateful from different gyms. There's a whole girl club or girl group that we have, and we train. So I just have to put the extra time in, and, you know, depending on what's in my life, I prioritize training or prioritize life stuff.
Yeah, I think like opportunistic training, it's something I've kind of had to take on for myself. Like, I like to train 6 days a week if possible, but then work gets in the way and health gets in the way, and then you get COVID, and then, you know what I mean? It's just this constant, then an injury comes up. So like for me, I've just kind of taken on being opportunistic in my training wherever I can get it in. I never allow myself to delay. Like if there's a 10 a.m. class and it's 9 a.m. and I can see that I can squeeze that class in, I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? I don't allow myself to go, oh no, I'll do maybe the lunch, because lunchtime is free. I was like, the first class I can get to go to on that day, I'm going to take, right, every time. But having said that, I find myself kind of struggling sometimes with my motivation, because like I went to Dubai, I came back, I had COVID before that, you know, like it's been a couple of months, and I'm really trying to get my brown belt. You know, there's a lot to do before I do that, but I'm on that mission. But yeah, do you struggle, especially someone who's kind of dealing with this inner dialogue, this dominant inner dialogue and everything else, when you're prioritizing life above prioritizing training, do you find that your motivation for jiu-jitsu shifts, or is it something that's always present and always constant?
I have this ongoing cycle in my head. So like it's pretty well known, like my goal right now since I did nationals is winning a ticket for ADCC. So I've literally not trained in a gi since then, and all of my priorities apart from being a mum have been put on hold, and I'm just training as much as I can for ADCC. But if I don't win the ticket, which I'm not talking about, which I say to people, I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to chill out and just train a couple of times a week, and I'll just compete now and then, but whatever, you know, I know that's not going to happen. I just have this drive in me that always just wants to test myself. However, I need to be realistic. I'm 36 now, you know, all these girls coming up, they're in their 20s, they are probably training full-time jiu-jitsu. So I think I've got an expiry date very shortly. But look at Kim. Kim's like nailing it still. So
I don't know about that. You're too kind. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you were saying when you're talking about the time, the importance of time. I think as a single mum, like that is more important to me than money, actually. Time. Like I just can't stand wasting time. My time is more precious to me than anything at all. So yeah, I hear you loud and clear about having to do that. And just going back to talking about your work. So you mentioned about being a nurse. You're a midwife, yeah?
No, I work in emergency.
Emergency. So how was that? Like, how has that been over the past couple of years? That's pretty stressful, yeah?
It's tough. It's actually worse now.
Yeah.
Post-COVID, because like everyone was scared. We really didn't get the big strain like America and the UK did, and lots of people died, and lots of nurses have quit the profession because they were literally working with 4 or 5 ventilated patients with a nurse that never had looked after a ventilated patient. So for people that don't know what ventilation is, they've got a tube down their throat, and they're on a machine that's helping them stay alive. So usually that's 1-to-1 in an ideal world, 1 patient, 1 nurse, but they didn't have the nursing capacity. So it was like 1 nurse that knew how to use the ventilators to another couple of nurses that kind of looked after the patient and cared for them, cleaned their body, turned them, gave them antibiotics or other drugs. So it was a very stressful period for, the other side of the world. Now we had this hype that we were continually like, when is it going to hit? And it kind of never did. And so people were really scared. The community was really scared. And so the presentations died off through the EDs. Now I work in one of the busiest EDs in the Southern Hemisphere, and it's now pretty awful to go to work. There's lots of nurse shortages, lots of ramping. I don't know if you guys see the news, but I'm sure you guys have the same issues there. But it is really stressful. But I started jiu-jitsu for, self-defense reason, which today I don't believe in. I think I'm going to be really controversial and say, like, no matter if you're a female against a male, it just takes 1 hit and you're knocked out, and that's the end of it. If they're trying to rape you, of course, it's going to be, it's going to be very difficult. But once you have weapons and, that 1 hit, I just think, people are unrealistic.
But it's not a magic bullet, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I guess, I did an assignment recently for my grad cert, and we have violence. We're exposed to workplace violence every single day, multiple times a day. And so, like, you think that it never affects you, but I think all emergency workers have some type of PTSD, but jiu-jitsu, and I think that there's going to be a study done about it, about how when you train, you're always kind of training in that flight or fight mode. And so you can kind of regulate your emotions when someone's yelling at you because you're continually getting choked out or armbarred or knee barred or whatever, you're used to that. So when someone's yelling at me and like threatening my life or whatever, I can maintain a really calm presence because of jiu-jitsu, I feel.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Actually, something I'm studying at the moment is the relatedness of learning one thing to other areas, because like it's actually proven, and Lockie Giles kind of promoted this book on his page. So then I got the book and started reading it. It's called Peak. And it just talks about, like, if I study chess, for example, because that's something I study a lot, will that make me better at jiu-jitsu, or will it make me better at other areas of life? And it's very well proven it will not, right? Which is really a shame for me, because I was trying to prove that chess is life. But I completely don't agree. I agree with you that, like, in learning jiu-jitsu and being placed under constant pressure or having to deal with constant pressure situations, it does make you, if you choose to apply it to other areas, like if you open the door as a conversation in your mind, like, okay, if I'm going to be better at pressure with jiu-jitsu, I'm therefore committed to being better at pressure in the emergency department. I believe that it is linked. You have to link it up in your own mind first. But if you do that, you're right. It filters over, because you're saying, like, while this person's screaming at you and they're on ice and all of these things are happening, right? You're saying, well, I deal with situations just like this in the gym, So I tend to agree. And yeah, so jiu-jitsu has definitely helped me a lot with anxiety and like public speaking, for example, or, you know, stressful arguments or whatever else, like, or violence in the street, random violence. Like I back myself more. But yeah, it is interesting to kind of, a lot of people think jiu-jitsu will solve all sorts of problems. It doesn't necessarily solve those problems. I think they need to allow it to solve problems in other areas of life, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But I guess like the question, Kim, is, has COVID been really hard? Yeah, of course it's been hard. Like our practices have changed. We have to wear an N95 mask still today, which is really annoying, even though the community is back to normal, to work each day. And it just like your relationship with patients changes. It's, you know, the way we do things now has changed. So I guess you get less sick, you know, you work in kids emergency and they're like, I love my own child, but they're all little ferals that have so much germs everywhere. And so I guess like, you know, when you work in that area, you're less likely to get sick now. But I think mostly COVID has definitely changed things for a lot of nurses.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're right.
Related people have you dealt with in emergency?
Pardon?
How many jiu-jitsu related injuries have you dealt with in emergency?
So many. And my first question to them is, what belt are you?
You're a nurse, right? You're that one that doesn't say, what is jiu-jitsu? You know?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, you're a white belt. Oh, that makes sense.
Is that where most of the injuries are happening?
Yeah, most of them. I've actually only looked after one colored belt before.
Yeah.
But the most of them are white belts.
Yeah. And on that, would you have any advice for people who are either beginning or for girls as well, you know, that are starting on the mats, who are, you know, just struggling with those early years of jiu-jitsu? You've been doing it for a pretty long time now. What's your advice to people of how not to get injured?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate that I've not had big injuries in jiu-jitsu, which is really lucky. So I guess you just need to remember that you're a woman and they're a man, and lots of men and even women go really rough. And so you need to say out loud, hey, you're rolling really hard. I can't defend it ever. So if you want to have a good roll, maybe put it back, bring back your pace and your strength, and we'll have a good technical roll. Otherwise, it's going to be bad for you and it's going to be bad for me. Yeah. If it continues, I guess like you have the power to say, I don't want to roll with you, and tell your professor or whatever you want to coach or
I think that applies to everyone, male and female, that communication is probably the key. Yeah. A lot of people, especially early days of jiu-jitsu, feel a little bit uncomfortable to speak up and say, no, I don't want to do that, or I don't want to, you know, partner with you, or whatever it is. But I think you're 100% right that you have to speak up. Otherwise, unfortunately, you're either going to get injured or maybe you'll just stop training.
Yeah. And people do jiu-jitsu for different reasons, and you know, not everyone needs to compete. It's just like a release, a social thing for people. So you just have to really, you know, acknowledge like, why are you doing this, and don't let anyone pressure you into it. And if you're rolling with bad people all the time, then I shouldn't say bad people, just people that don't respect your jiu-jitsu and your journey, then maybe it's a conversation with your professor or a gym change, you know.
And I think there are people in our club who don't ever roll with me, or I don't ever roll with them for different reasons, you know, and that's okay. Like like my view was I should roll with anyone anytime that they want to roll. But over the years, I've just learned, no, there's some people, I don't want to get injured, or I don't go hard enough for some people, they avoid me, or whatever it is, it's fine. You know, like it's okay to not roll with everybody in the club, in my view, you know.
And like I guess like this is probably a little bit of a different topic, but you know, when I started jiu-jitsu, and Kim, you're exactly the same, there wasn't very many females doing it, especially in Australia. And so you'd be like a rarity in your club, and you'd be treated a bit differently, or you know, and then more women started, and the culture, women bring a different energy to a gym, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's really bad. And I've experienced you know, lots of girls that don't want to roll with me. They also don't want to enter comps, I hear, because I've entered the comp And, you know, like, yeah, it's just really interesting people's perspective. And like, yeah, I guess there's Alice from Flow has started a women's only open mat. And it's really good because, you know, all women go and the culture is changing there. It's not as competitive, there's like no competition, and it's just really nice. So I just think depending on what gym you go to and depending what woman you roll with is, yeah, it's challenging.
You mentioned about communication. Do you think that's also the key with we've only got a little bit of time to cover it, but in terms of your changing gyms a couple of times, is that kind of the key to having a conversation with your professor about leaving?
Yeah,
because I know that can be a very tricky topic for a lot of people.
Oh boy,
changing clubs. Yeah,
it's that hard. The culture is like, you know, what is it, Creonti? You know, yeah. It's really hard, but I guess I don't really know why. It's cultural stuff. I guess it's evolved over the life of jiu-jitsu, but like no one cares if you go to, well, I'll say World Gym. I don't know if you know what World Gym is, to an EMF. Like no one cares. No, like you just go to a different gym. I think it's respectful to talk to your professor, and like if there is reasons, you have to be honest about it. My friend Dave Hart from Dominance, you know, always we have great conversations. I've been really good friends with him for many years, and he's like, you have to have difficult conversations with people. You don't just leave. If you've got problems, you need to acknowledge it. It's like in a relationship, you know, you've got to communicate these problems and give them a chance to fix it or not. But I guess like the reasons why I left Access because I love Jason to bits. I just not a Hicks and Gracie jiu-jitsu. I don't follow rules. I don't like to wear a white gi. Like I don't like being restrained, you know, with these things that he follows. And you know, Paulo was always my professor from white belt days, and I just miss Flow so much, and I love the culture that they bring there. But I guess like these days, you know, distance and time and being a mum is different. But yeah, definitely having a conversation saying, hey, if you've got problems XYZ, giving them a chance to fix it, and then being like, well, it's just not a fit for me.
Yeah, good on you. For courage. And you're right, because this jiu-jitsu journey is yours. It's like yours to make it how you want, and those choices are all pivotal. Absolutely. Like we had something similar recently out, like our head coach has gone back to Brazil, Thiago. Love him. And it will have an impact on the culture of the club. There's decisions to make. Some people have left, some people are staying, you know, but you know, these things are significant when they happen because as you say, it's about relationships at the end of the day. This is all relationship stuff. Not a club and a gym. That's not it. It's real people, multiple real people you have to interact with and show up with, and you know, deal with them every day.
Yeah. And sorry, go Kim.
No, I was just going to say any final words, because we've got about 2 minutes to go. So any last words of wisdom?
Well, I don't really have wisdom words, but I just
oh, rubbish. No, this has been great. No, you've had very, very much wisdom through this podcast.
Inner dialogue again.
Yeah, I don't know. Just I love jiu-jitsu, and there's many of us who have quit. But when you have that thought, I guess you just need to weigh up, you know, the positive that it brings to your life. And yeah, jiu-jitsu's changed my life for the better. And I've met so many good friends and traveled around the world, and it's the best. And thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I feel honored. So yeah.
Anytime. As I said, I guess we've kind of jumped the gun a little bit in getting you on before your black belt, because as I said, Anton is keen to get all the female Aussie black belts on. So once you do get that, we'll have to get you back on for a repeat, because we've had a couple of repeat guests already as well. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and all the very best of luck at the trials. I think this podcast will be coming out just before then. So if you could share it, that would be awesome. Help grow our little audience.
Absolutely. Well. I'll be sharing it. Well, thanks again, guys, and have a good day.
Thank you. See ya. Bye.
Bye.